Glad to welcome you back. It's still Rise and Shine coming to you live on Spectrum Television. And today our focus is on the inauguration at the national level, talking about President elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his vice, Shatim Kashima, who will be sworn in today as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the 16th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, in Akwa Ibom State, we are talking about the third democratically elected governor of Akwa Ibom State, in the person of Pastor Umoino, who he's the governor-elect at the moment. And of course, his deputy, distinguished Senator Akon Eyanyi. Well, right about now, we're going to look into other conversations
Yeah,
surrounding
definitely.
Nigeria, as everybody in the country and outside the shores of Nigeria. In fact, I would say the spotlight is on Nigeria right now, the world over.
Yeah, definitely on Nigeria and the world over. But this morning, one of our focus conversation that we will be looking at will be on definitely the inauguration expectations so far from the president elect, that's Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. And joining us to do justice to this particular conversation is Anthony Asukwo Mendy Achibong Esquire. He is a U.S. barred international attorney at law. He also has a background in broadcasting, and in 2018 he formed the now deregistered Nigeria for Democracy (NFD) party. He was the NFD presidential candidate for the 2019 elections. He is a good governance advocate who pushes for the dividends of democracy to trickle down to everyone. Achibong Esquire tackles social issues all over the country. Good to have you join us.
Thank you so very much.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and thank you, Francis, for having me today. It's
Good to
such
have
a
you,
pleasure.
Barrister.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're looking at expectations from Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. Now, let's not also forget that there's just been a lot of, back and forth in terms of whether he's going to be inaugurated as the 16th president. No, there's a court case and all of that. But I know that one thing that the federal government has constantly done is to let Nigerians know that whether there's a court case or litigations anywhere, May 29 is sacrosanct. So we have it today. We are going to be having an inauguration of the 16th president in the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But what would we say are the expectations we should be expecting from this particular administration?
Well, here are the challenges. A lot of us would have preferred that the electoral challenges in the presidential electoral tribunal was exhausted before today. 29th of May is only sacrosanct to the extent that that day signifies the handover of the government to a legitimately elected person to run to govern the country as the president without subsisting challenges. So with these challenges, it doesn't really make people feel comfortable, because let's say that in the next 6 months, because the tribunal will start sitting again tomorrow, in the next 6 months, the unthinkable happens, and Ahmed Tinubu is removed as the president, or the elections is cancelled, or someone else is named as the president of Nigeria. Then how do we all feel, apart from our sentiments and emotions? Does it leave legitimate the actions of the president between 29th of May and in the next 6 months? It leaves the country in a lurch. Furthermore, it leaves investors a little bit reluctant and unwilling to invest heavily in the country as they wait to see the outcome of the tribunal's decisions and the appeal process itself. So today, though, is a day to celebrate for the country, for the Federation of Nigeria, but that celebration has been rather muted, because at the back of our minds, we are saying, okay, he's going to be sworn in, but what happens with the petitions that are still existing and are still ongoing in the court? One of the things that we should probably take as a lesson away from this is that we must do everything possible, and if it means to enact a law that brings this into the white and black pages of the book, it should be that every challenge is exhausted just like it happened in Kenya, and just like it happened in the United States of America, where we borrowed our democracy and a specific presidential system of governance from. Every challenge was exhausted before Biden was sworn in, before William Ruto was sworn in Kenya, and every challenge should have been exhausted before this inauguration. Be that as it may. After today, after Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been sworn in, he is the president, no matter how we feel about it, and no matter the fact that we will await the outcome of the tribunal. He is the president, and our hopes will now fall on his shoulders to act in such a manner that he moves the country forward with the help of Nigerians. He can't do a lot of these things alone. I mean, we have to admit that the vigor that he used to move and transform Lagos State is gone, because every day we get older and we lose a little bit of vitality, and it's obvious that he's lost a little bit of vigor in that essence. So we all have to come together and push the country forward, because there is one thing: if it rains, it doesn't rain on the roof of one man alone in an area. If Nigeria succeeds, it lifts everybody up. A rising tide lifts all boats. But if we stand back and fold our hands on Stan Akimbo and wish him ill, we are actually wishing the country ill and are wishing ourselves ill. So we can't stand back and put our hands behind our backs on Stan Akimbo and say, well, I didn't vote for him and I'm waiting for the tribunal's decision, so I'm not going to help him. No, we have to work together to move the country forward. Some of the first things that we would expect is the economy. It's biting on everybody. There is nobody that is smiling, at least at the level of business, at least at the level of a worker. I mean, look at the value of the naira. Look, Buhari, yes, did good in increasing the minimum wage. But the minimum wage today is almost at the same value of what it was maybe 8 years ago. Okay, the value of 30,000. Well, probably can't get what you got 8 years ago for 15,000 naira. Just if, for example, a bag of rice 8 years ago, maybe about 12,000. Well, a bag of rice today is in the range of 35, 40,000 naira, depending on what area of the country you're getting that local bag of rice from. Yeah. So the challenges are much, and has been accentuated by the cashless policy, which has made a lot of people, uncomfortable economically. Yeah. So these are the things that we hope that we work together in the Federation of Nigeria to help the incoming administration to move forward. I was there at the last inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019. The mood was different from 2015 when he won the elections. The mood today is a little bit different. It's a little bit more subdued, a little bit more somber, a little bit more challenged. And thus, we have to do everything possible to make sure that we put aside our political differences, our ideologies, and move forward with just the ideology of one Nigeria, and well, we await the outcome of the
I think when we talk about one Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians have said, look, before we even begin to talk about peace and reconciliation, there has to be justice served, and that's what a lot are waiting to get from the court. But let's just leave that aside. One other thing I want us to look at, when we talk about expectations, would we say Nigerians are actually expecting so much from this particular administration? Also owing to the fact that we are coming from the back end of a Buhari-led administration and an APC-led government. I was just looking at something yesterday, analysis of how many times ASU went on strike and a totality of how many days ASU went on strike during the period that Buhari was in power, and it amounted to over 600 days. Now, what should we expect more, or we should just leverage on, okay, yes, APC did this, our Buhari's administration did that?
Well, if you look at the number of days that ASU went on strike, some other person might say, could this have been handled differently? Should they have just gone to court while still tutoring our young ones? Because our young ones were the ones that bore the brunt of the strike. It's unfortunate. Some also would argue, well, Buhari did a lot of good things in establishing federal universities all over the country. There are quite a good number of universities that he did establish. In this area, was there a certain level of failure? Yes. We all have to admit that anytime there is a strike that affects the students, affects the quality of education in our country, it's classified as a failure, no matter how you look at it. Do we have lessons that we can learn from that? Yes, there are lessons that we should be able to learn from that. Will this incoming administration learn those lessons? Well, it seems like there is a certain level of persistency with this strike, and it's not just the Buhari's administration, and I'm not making excuses for him. I'm simply saying that it's become systemic in nature, and we all have to put our hands together and say, how can we end this strike? What is the root cause of the strike? What did the academic staff of universities actually achieve at the end of the strike? It leaves a lot wanting to be factual about it. Unfortunately, these strikes did happen. But did the educational sector actually benefit from the strikes? I doubt it. So the blame is apportioned to both sides. The government in its inability to end the strike and meet with the ASU staff hierarchy in a timely manner and relieve the burden of the strike from the young ones being our children and being our students. If you want to judge the outgoing administration by that, there are more things to judge.
That's just one out of the so many, situations that we would use to judge the past administration.
I think the administration has done some good things, and I think the administration has failed woefully in some other areas. When you look at the good things, the woeful part of it is the insecurity, the failure of the architecture. Infrastructure in the country. There is no part of the country today that is safe, that you can drive out at 1 a.m. and come back home without feeling a certain level of anxiety. You can't drive across the country feeling safe anymore. You can't drive from here to Zaria and say you are feeling safe, or to Kano, or to Kaduna, or to Borno State. There are certain parts of the country that are under siege. So in terms of this administration's successes and failures, this is the most prominent. Insecurity. Where there is no security, there is just no development. That is a fact of itself. But you also look at the successes of this administration. They are a little bit hidden. When you look at the discrimination against disabled persons, prohibition, that is huge. Just look at it. Disabled persons are at the fringe end of the society. Now we are going to be able to bring them in. If you go to most government buildings, for example, there are no ramps for disabled persons to be able to go into the building itself, and it's so humiliating to a disabled person when he has to solicit help to be carried up the steps or into a building. Now that will end. When you look at the Business Facilitation Act itself, it's a hidden law that has been enacted and signed into being by this administration. Sometimes you go to a government office and you file a request and it's just ignored. It's put aside. And you wait 6 months, you wait 1 year, you wait 2 years, you just hear nothing from them. But the Business Facilitation Act actually empowers the person in terms of the onus of acting.
Yeah.
Now rest on the government parastatal or department. If they don't act, it means they've consented to your request within 6 months. Now, if they don't want to consent to your request, then they have to respond. Now that gives people a timeline in terms of, when I make this request to the department, I'm going to get my response within a certain time frame. That has moved the business environment in a positive manner further. And the KAMA Act that has come to play, and the much controversial Electoral Act of 2022, although it failed to some extent in 2023 presidential elections, it failed in implementation because people deliberately, obstructed it. But it did succeed in Anambra, it did succeed in Ekiti, it did succeed in Osun. So we have to now stand back and say, even with this law in place, there were challenges. Could it have been better in terms of implementation? Yes. Is this government responsible for that level of failure? Well, in retrospect, in hindsight, I'll leave others, especially when the tribunal comes back with its decision. I'll leave that decision to be made by the tribunal and to the people of the Federation of Nigeria. Have people become more impoverished in the Federation of Nigeria? That is a resounding yes. Despite the fact that the government has succeeded in a lot of things, okay? if it has failed economically, well, the stomach is the infrastructure that is the most important part of it. So if it has failed economically, well, a lot of people don't care. You build highways, you build roads, you whatever you do. If they can't have 3 square meals a day, it is a failure. Because when you can't feed yourself, you can't send your children to school, you can't buy a car, you can't pay rent, you can't pay your transport to work. It has a domino effect that actually dampens the mood of the society.
Now, I'm even happy that you've been able to enumerate some of these failures in the past administration. It's past because, of course, we'll be seeing a new administration today. Now, when we are coming from this kind of background, and it's the same party, the All Progressives Congress, that is producing the next president, so what hope do we have? Because I think that during the campaigns now, Francis, we've heard Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying that, oh, he's going to continue from where President Muhammadu Buhari stopped. So if President Muhammadu Buhari has not been able to give Nigerians a good outing for the past 8 years, then what should we be expecting from a Bola Ahmed Tinubu? I know that he's more like a technocrat. Fantastic. They always take it back to Lagos State and all the things that he did. But you have said it that strength is failing, of course, because of age. So what should we be expecting? What are the agendas that we should be setting for the next administration?
Well, look at it this way. We have a national team that we all love and adore, the Green Eagles or Super Eagles.
Super Eagles.
So if they lose a match, does it mean we have to scrap the name and scrap the whole team and believe that they will never win? The fact that APC is the one that is still going to continue in power does not mean that the goals and objectives will remain the same. The level of vigor in implementing and making changes will remain the same. That there will be a failure in government where the outgoing administration failed. Now we are going to have different people in government now. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the incoming president, is going to have his own team, and we can only hope that this team will reflect a different philosophy and ideology for Nigeria. Not everyone in this outgoing administration will be in Bola Ahmed's team. And the fact that it is the All Progressive Congress that will continue in power as a party does not mean that the persons that will take over will share the same ideology. And, to be honest about it, the political parties in Nigeria do not really have a definite ideology. It is a matter of, well, I'm in power, so I'll do what is the best, I believe is best for the government now. There is no definite ideology. One of the things I would definitely want to see the incoming administration move away from is nepotism, is a religious bias, is a tribal bias, is regional bias, and focus more on competence and those who want to actually govern a country. Good governance. That is the ideal situation that we do want to see. The fact that it is APC that will continue does not mean that the failures of the outgoing administration will continue. It doesn't mean that the successes of the outgoing administration will continue. It simply just means that a different set of people with probably a different set of ideologies and policies will now get into power. And hopefully, if we all work together, we can bring a different and new dawn for the Federation of Nigeria.
I like the finishing point now.
Okay, so
More like there is hope.
There is hope.
There is always hope where there is life.
Well, that's the only thing we have to hold on to where we lose every other thing. But I like to come from a different point of view. The Buhari administration is leaving behind a lot of debt for the nation. And there is a lot of concern from all quarters. Recently, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, had advised Nigeria, and particularly the incoming administration, to look in the area of revenue generation. But taking a cue from what the Mozambique government are currently trying to do, pay cuts for government officials, politicians, we all know how much our politicians take home. Is that the kind of conversation we should begin to push forward as the incoming administration comes on board, as a way of further reducing the cost of governance, which has been a major cause for concern?
I think when people talk about pay cuts, they are looking at it from the prism of punitive measures. The politicians should not be earning this much. They should reduce their pay. It doesn't change anything. It is the policies. It is the ideology that actually does work. When you look at debt, well, if you look at Mozambique, well, let's wait and see if they will succeed in that regard, because politicians are one of the most ingenious set of human beings on earth. You can take everything away from them and they find a way to even take more back from you. When you look at debt itself, look at the US government. They've just hit the ceiling or about to hit the ceiling, and there are now a lot of wrangling around how do we increase the debt ceiling so that we do not have a default. So Nigeria is not the only country that is indebted in the world. The United States is indebted, France is indebted, United Kingdom, England is indebted. Almost every country is indebted. Now the challenge is, when you borrow, what do you use these funds for? Is it for frivolities? Is it for the development of infrastructure so that people can now have a source of income, or they can be internally generated revenue that will help to propel the economy forward? Remember when Barack Obama came into power in 2008, there was a lot of borrowing because he needed to sustain the economy and hold the economy's bottom from bottoming out. People were losing their jobs in thousands at that point in time. The money that he borrowed was used effectively to strengthen General Motors, to strengthen other financial institutions, and the country's economy stabilized. So the money that has been borrowed by the outgoing administration, what has it been used for? When you look at some of the things, and I'm not holding brief for them, you look at Nigeria Air, that was a blatant misrepresentation. There is nothing like Nigeria Air. I understand
but we saw airplanes.
It flew back to Ethiopia, so just forget about that. But when you look at it, the second Niger bridge is in place. I don't know if you've gone to the west or the north by road. You would really enjoy that second Niger bridge. You don't have to wait at the bridge for hours and hours and hours for one side to be passed through, and then you pass through. So that's good. The federal universities that have come into place, that is good. The strengthening of the military has really been strengthened, especially the Navy and the Air Force. Those canoes that have been bought, they cost a lot of money. That's it. But a lot of the money that has been borrowed has been frittered away by corruption and by fraud. The level of corruption in this administration is, to be very kind to them, shocking and unfortunate, because we really thought that the statement, if we don't end corruption, corruption will end us. If we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. Either way you want to take that phrase. They've not been able to deal with corruption at the level and with the sense of intensity that we would have preferred. Because if a country is rife with corruption, then the economy of that country will suffer. But when you look at the totality of Nigeria, the end of corruption will not be achieved by the government alone. It should be achieved by the government with the collaboration and cooperation of everyone. We have what is called, under the Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency, and I don't know, a lot of people did live through Buhari's first coming with the war against indiscipline. If that had succeeded, we would not be where we are. But if the National Orientation Agency has been properly strengthened and the information sent out, we would have a lot of changes. If you want to understand what corruption is, just go on the road and see the different task forces, see the different police organizations, see the different immigration, see customs. At every point of the road, you are going to have to deal with corruption. You obviously have videos online with people bribing officials.
Okay.
I'm not focusing on the police because it's everybody. It is against the law to give, and it is against the law to receive bribe. If you go to government offices, are you able to carry out a transaction without having to meet someone to say, here is 2,000, here is 3,000, push my file forward? This is the corruption that actually does inhibit the growth of the country. It will take someone strong-willed who will actually allow our institutions to grow, and then the strengthening of those institutions will now wipe away corruption. I like what the Nigerian police force is doing. If you look at the Police Enactment Act that Buhari signed into being, I believe that was 2018 or 2019, you see that one of the goals was better policing and a better police force for the Federation of Nigeria. That is why you see the responsiveness of the police whenever you see videos or concrete evidence of police brutality or police corruption. They are dealt with immediately, as against before, where the police force would just ignore such incidents. But right now, yes, they are dealt with. They are removed from the force. There is an orderly room trial. There is a court trial, and they are dealt with. So now you have a certain level of confidence that if you have proof that the police has dealt with you in a manner that is in violation of the ethics of policing in the Federation of Nigeria, that you are going to hear from the police force and they are going to act. That is the beginning of positive movement for the country.
Okay, now let's go back to the person of the President-elect Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Now, he's been said to be the Jagaban, the grandfather of all the godfathers in the Nigerian political scene. And he has shown himself within the electioneering period to be just that. Do you think he has the political will
Exactly.
to actually ensure that our institutions are strengthened? Because it seems that is where the biggest challenges rest.
Well, my favorite football team is Rangers International of Enugu. And Christian Chukwu was a fantastic footballer. Emmanuel Okala was one of the best goalkeepers. But can they play today? No. One of those that the Super Eagles did win the Olympics Cup a few years ago. Nwankwo was there, Jejo Kocha was there, but can they play today? No. Every man has his time and an era. I wish that Bola Ahmed Tinubu had run actually in 2015 when he was at his peak, generally, so to speak, in terms of prowess. But he's alive. He says he doesn't need the Olympic spirit or the energy of an Olympian to be able to run a country as diverse as Nigeria, as challenging as Nigeria. I wish him and the Federation good luck from the bottom of my heart, because the success of Jagaban is the success of Nigeria and myself as well. So we must all cooperate. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at this man, no matter his age, his achievement, he's one of the best in terms of human capital and capacity. He's just one of the very best. The other person that has probably come close or done better than him has been former General Babangida, who has all his boys in so many different positions. But Bola Ahmed Tinubu has developed a lot of people. Let's take a look at his contemporaries. Were they able to develop as many people and put as many people in different positions of authority and power and grow so many people? Maybe, but I just don't see any of his contemporaries as a governor who was able to do so. But does it mean that he still has that vigor, that ability, that strength to be able to run a country as complex as Nigeria? Some think so. And that is why he was declared as the president of the last elections. And we have to give him the opportunity to do so. Until the tribunal says otherwise, or the tribunal actually affirms the decision by INEC and supposedly a majority of Nigerians.
Okay, so another thing now, you mentioned the fact that, and we all know, Nigeria cannot thrive just because we have somebody at the helms of affairs. It needs our collective contributions. Now, there is something called the whistleblower policy in Nigeria, and that has not been functioning owing to some of the challenges that have been pointed out. You can call the security agencies, you give an information, and you're not even sure your safety is going to be protected. Now, in these regards, what do you think can be done differently for the Nigerian people to now take that individual responsibility to know that, yes, when I reach out to government officials, to government agencies, I am going to be protected, and so encourage them to do their part?
That might be a failure of the institution, not a failure of the government. It means there are people in a position of authority that should be able to deal with the whistleblower policy and the affirmations of that policy in terms of protecting the whistleblower who are failing. Now, that happens everywhere in the world. There's a whistleblower policy in the United States of America. Does it work all the time? No. That's why sometimes people in witness protection boxes actually do get killed. And people that have actually come out as whistleblowers actually do lose their jobs. It's a dicey situation, because remember, for the whistleblower policy to be effective, you have to bring forth information that is not readily available to the general public, or is not readily available with due diligence to the police with at least minimal investigation. That's the standard. So when a person says, I'm a whistleblower, and I gave them information and they fail to act in a reasonable manner or in an appropriate manner using that information, it means that to a certain extent that the information passed by the whistleblower did not meet that threshold of not being readily available according to the law to the public, or not being readily available with at least minimal diligence by the police force.
Okay, I think yesterday we heard the president-elect also say that this has been a dream of his, wanting to become the president, that he campaigned for it, and he won the election, so nobody should pity him because he has the capacity to do the job, and all Nigerians should also know that he is ready for the job as well. But unity has been one very major conversation and advice that has been given to the president-elect, who will be the president today, that there should be that ability from his side to be able to unite Nigerians again.
Well, today Nigerians appear to be even more disunited.
Along ethnic lines?
Yes, ethnic lines, political lines, religious lines, tribal lines, more than before the Civil War and after the Civil War. I learned how to count in Hausa, Dayabyuku, Huku, up to 4. I can go up to 5. I learned to count in Igbo, as well. I learned to count in Yoruba as well, at least to a certain number, and of course my Ibibio as well. But the differences today keeps us in silos, such that we don't even reach out to understand each other as well. Growing up, we used to have Salah. We celebrated Salah, Baraka the Salah, we said to each other. But now it is regarded as a Muslim holiday that we must not participate in because we don't want to be associated with that. Well, I would also say that it is more difficult now to have persons from different ethnic backgrounds coming to be on the governing council of a University of Uyo, which is a federal university, or in a different university, if they are of a different region and different ethnic background. I remember my mother was in the governing council for University of Ife, Ile-Ife, and Ahmadu Bello University, and she used to fly out there or drive out there without hindrance. But that is not happening anymore. Any non-ethnic vice chancellor that goes to any federal university is challenged as not being one of ours, which is not true. So the level of disunity in the Federation of Nigeria has to be dealt with. The Presidential Tribunal, the Presidential Transition Council, actually did send out messages of unity and sent out messages of supporting the incoming government. I think that was commendable, but it also speaks to the fact that they notice and realize that there is a high degree of disunity and unacceptance of the incoming administration.
Anyways, I would say a very big thank you to you, Anthony Asukwa Mendy at Chibong Esquire. It's always a pleasure having you, and always great to listen to you, do your analysis and all of that. But a very big thank you to you.
Thank you, Francis.
We also hope to have you consequently on the show, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the much we'll be taking for this particular segment. When we come back again, we'll have our next guest join us this morning, and of course we'll be looking at Akwa Ibom State. We know that the baton is going to be changing hands this morning, I think by 10 o'clock or so, Francis. Yes, the baton will be changing hands from the administration of Udom Emmanuel to that of Pastor Umoino, and of course his deputy Afion Iyagayi. But how has the administration of Umoino been so far, the 8 years, and what will be the expectations of Akwa Ibomites also from the administration of Pastor Umoino? This and more we'll be having very shortly. Don't go nowhere.
Business exists. only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon. 23 years since the advent of uninterrupted civilian rule in Nigeria, and the nation is bracing itself for another major transition. The stage is set for the formal transfer of power from one administration to another, as the Eagle Square, Abuja, plays host to the top brass of the country's political elite and distinguished invited guests to affirm her status as a democratic nation. Join us on Spectrum Television for a live broadcast of the 2023 handing over and inauguration ceremony of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Grand Commander of the Federal Republic (GCFR), as the 16th elected President of Nigeria, and Vice President-elect Senator Kashim Shettima, Grand Commander, Order of the Niger (GCON). Date: Monday, May 29, 2023. Time 10 a.m. Join the live broadcast on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with live feeds on all our social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The May 29 presidential inauguration ceremony on Spectrum Television. We broaden your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Glad to welcome you back. It's still Rise and Shine, coming to live on Spectrum Television, and today is all about the inauguration of the incoming administration, talking about President-elect, who will, of course, starting today, be called the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and is the Vice, talking about Senator Shatim Kashima. And back here in Akwa Ibom State, you're looking at Pastor Umoino as the governor-elect, who will no longer be governor-elect, but governor. And his deputy, distinguished Senator Akone Yanyi, will also no longer be deputy governor-elect, but the deputy governor. And joining us on set today to further look into the different issues, particularly focusing on Akwa Ibom State, is Professor Etefia Ekanem, is the Dean Student Affairs, University of Uyo. He's also a professor of law. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine, Prof.
Prof, I know that you've come under, how would I put it now? Okay, let me leave the way I'm thinking, okay. But let's go straight into the conversation. Yes, change of baton from one administration to the other. How does it make you feel? Let's start from there. What's the feeling this morning?
Yeah, for me, today, May 29th, is 2023, is like every other day. But I know that we are full of expectations with mixed feelings. We've had these kind of expectations before. Maybe perhaps as we are growing, we are adding years to our lives, we are beginning to come to the conclusion that we just live. Let's just live, because we have had expectations in the past that were cut short. The last transition, I was really very active. That was 2015, 2019. And if we didn't have the government we had at the national level, I'd have lived all my life believing that Buhari was the president, with the man who could have turned things around for Nigeria. one could have continued believing that if we had given him the opportunity, that Nigeria would have turned Nigeria into an El Dorado. 2015 came, and God gave us the opportunity. We renewed our mandate in 2019. Today, the story is clear. Same thing in the States. In the state, we have had a lawyer, an architect, and at the point we say, okay, let us try someone who is not a core politician, someone from the private sector, that with his wealth of experience, things should be turned around. You see, these were the expectations we had in 2015. And we were like saying, okay, if we say 4 years is not enough, but when we got to 2019, we renewed the mandate, both at the national and here in the states. And today, on my way here, the road leading to this station is still in a horrible state. And Nigerians are living here. People, Okwebumites, are living around here. And this is where we have found ourselves. Sometimes, let me tell you as it is here. Sometimes some of us who are fortunate, I'm using the word fortunate, to have what we do, such that at the end of the week or at the end of the month, we receive alert. When we walk on the streets, we meet a lot of persons who do not have something to do, unemployed youths everywhere, and they come after you. And many of them are really in need. So that's the state we find ourselves. And when we consider today, the state of things today, and when we were in 2015, one wonders if we have made much progress, or any progress first. Before one can say, okay, we have at least the fact that we are alive is okay. We can thank God that we are alive. After all, there are many who were unable to make it. So that's enough to thank God. And the fact that when we walk on the streets of Uyo and other parts of Nigeria, we see some beautiful things here and there. It is enough for us to say thank God.
Okay, Prof, let's come back. Let's start off from Akwa Ibom State. You mentioned our road. Yes, we agree that this is one project that should have been fixed. We've had promises from successive administration, including the present or the outgoing administration of Governor Domi Manuel. But like our last guest, Barrister Archiban said, hope is the last thing that we still have to hold on to and see that things would change. I'd like to come. You've said if we look at the past 8 years of this present administration, it might seem like nothing has happened, but a lot of persons will disagree with you. Now we've had Ibom Air, which is currently ongoing. We've had different, industries cited in line with the industrialization agenda of this outgoing administration. In that regards, would you not say the administration of Governor Domi Manuel has done its bit?
Let's correct one impression. I haven't said nothing has been done. I have said at least there are bright lights here and there. I mentioned that. Yeah, the administration of His Excellency Udom Emmanuel has made some marks, has got some points in some areas. Innovation, I give it to him. Ibom Air today ranks as one of the best in this country. Very time conscious, clean, good services. The services rendered by Ibom Air can be compared to whatever anybody can get in any part of the world, and that's a good one. The security-wise, there were times we were unable to sleep in these states. There were times that once it was getting to 7 p.m., you see everyone running home as if we were going to have some fortress to protect one at home. But on getting home, as the clock gets to 8 o'clock, one wouldn't know whether to go inside the room or whether to come out and sit at the gates with groups of neighbors as vigilante. That's what, in this state, it happened. Both robbers and cultists wouldn't allow people, giving people a breathing space. But I give it to the Governor Don Emmanuel. His zero tolerance to cultism has had great impact. There were times in this state where I remember where someone met me. I was driving on the road, and the person was driving too. At this time, he was using a green number plate, and he cleared, flashed me with clear, and he cleared, and he came to me, and he told me that thing that we said when we were in school, we said wasn't going to pay. The thing has now paid off, and that they are now using green number plate. I'm sure you should understand what the guy meant by that thing. You know, people will say that cultism does not pay. So at that time, the young man was simply saying that thing you people said wasn't paying. Today, if you see, it is paying. Governor Emmanuel Udom came in and showed zero tolerance to cultism. And that is a plus to him. When the leader does that, he points to a direction where people should follow. And that has greatly impacted on this state. Even the last election, people were now looking, without even the government saying it, does this person belong to any cult group or the other? It became, people were able to talk about it, to engage even those who are the aspirants openly. And that is a plus to the governor. Now we move to other sectors. Now, industrialization. Until this administration came on board, what we used to know, the experience in this state was that every person who aspires to be the leader will come and deceive us, will use industrialization to deceive us. I remember one who told us that was going to give us at least one or two industry in each local government. And he left with almost nothing in that direction. So when Udom came and said the same thing, I didn't expect to see anything. For me, it was just, we've heard these stories before. Okay, if you want to be governor, come and be governor. At least you are not you are not from the traditional, one of the traditional politicians we have known. From your background, let's hope you will at least be able to manage our resources. So when he came, I didn't expect anything in that direction. But I think as time went on, we heard about the pencil industry. I'm not sure I've seen any pencil from there. We also heard about the toothpick. I don't know if the toothpick is or has ever been used in government house. Then there were others.
There's a tomato factory.
Yes, there's a tomato factory. There is this one at this flour mill too. Then there is the one in my area. They call it, what you call it, the coconut. Is it the coconut?
I think there's
refinery.
Is it coconut refinery?
Yeah. Yes, even though that's in my area, I go home. I'm not sure I've seen any products from that industry. I discussed with people in my village. I'm not sure I've seen anybody who said he has also seen the products from that village. The other day, I think precisely last week, I drove to the area where you have the flour mill, and I engaged the locals, and they told me, people say that it's rolling. I asked if the product are seen. Well, I've not seen the product. Maybe they are there in the market. My wife goes to the market, she buys. I'm not sure I can't remember hearing now.
Okay, sorry, I'd like to ask, did you get into the flour mill factory itself?
No, I didn't get in there.
Okay,
but
so
I needed to engage the people in the community.
Another thing, I think I would have loved to hear your perspective about his overall performance. Yesterday, also listening to him, I know that the governor said that he has tried his utmost best, you know, in terms of giving Akwa Ibom State dividends of democracy. When you add all of that to how he met the state, number one, and the available resources at his disposal, that he's been able to give Akwa Ibomites, you know, that dividend of democracy. But what was baffling to me is that of all the, you know, all the industries and all of the projects that the governor has cited, he made mention of the fact that there is a problem with Akwa Ibomites in terms of dismantling, in terms of stealing, in terms of vandalization and all of that. And this brings me to the coconut industry or refinery that you actually mentioned. It was also said that these you know, seedlings, coconut seedlings were brought in, and at some point even the equipment that was brought in, they were vandalized by human beings. They were vandalized by people. Okay, so we have a guest join us virtually now. We've been waiting for you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, Francis, please do us
Can you hear me, please?
Yes,
okay, yes. Good morning, Emmanuel Ododi is our guest, joining us from the UK. We're glad to have you. So sorry, we've been going back and forth trying to connect with you. How do you feel about, you know, today, Nigeria, generally, we're having the inauguration of the incoming administration, both at the federal level and at the state level?
As a Nigerian and as an individual, I don't think I'm so enthused about this because growing up, we've seen successive governance and nothing seemingly has changed. So I don't want to dash my hope thinking something different is going to happen. So I'll just stay on the watch to see what God will have in stock for us this time around. You know, it's been promising upon promising, and significantly, we've not been able to see anything different. So we'll just keep our hope in God, trusting that we'll have it better this time around, but not to fully trust in their promises. We've not had it real good in Nigeria, so I don't want to dash my hope in anything that you're not doing now.
You're sounding fallen as well because of all the disappointments we've had so far. And I think one major issue that I even wanted us to discuss, if you had joined us earlier, is the Jackpot syndrome in the country right now. Everybody seems to be leaving the country and, you know, going to other places. What do you think of this present administration? Do you think that, okay, maybe we should even start from Akwa Ibom State and then look at Nigeria generally? Would we have a reduction in Jackpot syndrome, or it will just continue because of where we are as a country?
Ordinarily, I would have declined to speak because I'm quite aware of a lot of litigation. And I think in a sane society, these hurts have been sorted out first before we think of going into an inauguration. Your house wouldn't be on fire, then you are going out to do charity. So I think Nigeria is still not getting it right. For us, that a bit exposed and seeing how things are done out here. I think I refuse to say anything now because I believe in litigation and also believe in the rule of law, where people do things that wish as if the country is their personal estate. I don't want to believe this should continue. So the Japa syndrome of a thing is where the society or the system has failed Nigerians. You have people graduated for 15, 10 years, no hope of getting anything to do. You have medical doctors going outside to seek for greener pasture. These are the failed system. These are the problems, the numerous problems the Nigerian government has created. So for me, I would think we should look forward to the end of the litigation. A lot of things are pending in the courts. So I think I will just wait to see the outcomes of these court cases lying.
Okay, our time is almost up. We have about just 2 minutes for us to wrap up this conversation. But definitely, let's come back to Prof. Etefia. We have a government that will be installed today, and that's the government of Pastor Umoino. What should Akwa Ibomites be looking at? Mr. Emmanuel, I'm happy that you're also an Akwa Ibomite staying in the United Kingdom. So you always so tell us your expectation from this particular administration. Please go ahead, Prof.
So let me say this. Generally, many Akwa Ibomites are disappointed. Yeah. Like the governor might have said he tried his best, but was his best good enough? You have the pensioners talking of unpaid gratuities and unemployment, rate of unemployment and all of those. If those industries are really there on ground, they should be able to absorb the unemployed. So, but having said this being on ground, and we are expecting a new administration. What hope? I'll just tell any Akwa Ibomite to pray, to hope, to just believe God that let God take charge, because the expectations are not really high. I do not expect magic to happen, and more so, this is a system where we had. Wasn't going to impose a leader on you. I wasn't going to impose a leader on you. But when the chips were down, I think we should really, the major problem we are having, perhaps it is still with the people, because the people get the kind of leadership that they deserve. We cannot be what we are, and we expect that angels will fall from heaven to be our leaders. Umoino is like any other Akwa Ibomite, and it's just one of us who today has the mandate to provide leadership, and who is equal to lead. We Akwa Ibomite, I still expect that things will go the way they've always been. Yes. Do I expect more in the education sector? Capital, no. Do I expect that our schools will be better? Particularly when one leaves Uyo and goes outside to the villages. Will I expect anything? Well, unless God intervenes. Otherwise, the expectation is quite low.
Okay, so if we still have Emmanuel Edodi on, please, let's just hear your final word as we wrap up things this morning.
As an oral man, I feel that we have a basic issues. And as such, a typical oral person will tell you their expectations have never been met, and they will not want to put their hope in any thing the state government is doing again this time around. Looking at the infrastructures we have in our, nothing to write home about. We don't have any accessible road to my place. And I don't think we expect anything more or new. Then, till this narrative is changed completely. We don't have lights. Educationally, oral has been relegated to the background. Nothing tangible is happening. So we feel we're not part of this whole system because of the way we are being treated in our country.
All right.
For me, I don't think a typical oral person is expecting anything new or serious from this system.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Emmanuel Edodi from the United Kingdom. Thank you so much. I know that one conversation has always been that your own people feel marginalized and all of that. We are also hoping that with the likes of the Deputy Governor, that can also be looked into.
Definitely, that's the expectation, and not just the Oron people. You're talking about the Isnobola people. You're talking about the other, minority ethnicity within Akwa Ibom State also seeking to be given their right of place, and of course in terms of development and all of that. So we have to keep hope alive.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Professor Etefia Kanam, of course, Dean, Student Affairs, University of U, and Professor at Law. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, this is the much we can take this morning on Rise and Shine. Of course, don't forget to join us again by 10 a.m. where we'll be linking up with Abuja for the live transmission of the inauguration of the 16th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and of course his Vice Senator Kashim Shettima. Our studios will be open from 10 for that particular interesting conversations. Do stay with us. Remember to also follow us on all our social media platforms. And of course, we'll see you again tomorrow for another blockbuster Rise and Shine show. My name is Janice Coble. Do have a great day.
And I am Francis at 8.